I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, it's been a while that I've done a video on Airbnb and its impact on the Vancouver, let's call it, condo market, because I get a lot of people that will always ask me, and I'll do a part 2 of this blog here later this month or next month, about, is Airbnb and short-term rentals having a big impact on the downtown condo market, especially the rental market, now that we're seeing rental rates spike up to all-time record prices, of course, like I had predicted 2 years ago during COVID. And of course, condo prices are at all-time highs as well. The answer to that is no. The first blog I did on Airbnb, and I think I was one of the first, I think I was the first to ever talk about the impact of Airbnb on Vancouver condo prices and the rental market. Go into my archives. I did that blog about 7 years ago. I was an early adopter of using Airbnb. My wife and I used it a lot down in Southern California. And this was probably 7-8 years ago. And I knew it wouldn't take long before this moved up to Vancouver, which it did. Airbnb added Vancouver shortly thereafter. And at the time, 7 years ago or so, that did have an impact on the market, because a lot of landlords that were renting units downtown Vancouver vacant on 1-year leases, when the tenancy ended, many of them decided to, hey, let's put some furniture in there and throw it on Airbnb and rent it by the night. I actually had several clients back 6-7 years ago that did that exact same thing and had a lot of success with it. The thing was, though, the party didn't last that long. It lasted about 2 or 3 years, depending on the strata. Some stratas immediately, very early, held an SGM and banned Airbnb. And then it gradually, over the next 3 years or so, most stratas have outlawed Airbnb. And that's what we're currently at right now. Most of the Airbnbs you see right now, if you look, especially in condos, so let's call it downtown Vancouver, Yaletown, West End, Cole Harbour, the majority of those are being run illegally, which I'll get into a minute. There's a group of these people that prey on unsuspecting landlords, inexperienced landlords, where they will rent the property, tell them that, hey, this is going to be my new home. They look great when they show up. It's a nice young couple. And as soon as they get the keys, they turn around and put it on Airbnb illegally. And they know the racket. It is a racket that these people run. They know that it won't take too long for them to get caught. It never does. The strata will pick up on it when they see people coming and going with suitcases. But they know the routine here. It's going to take months and months and months to get them out of the unit. Meanwhile, they'll just continue renting it. When they finally do get evicted, they'll move on to another one. And I'll tell you a Frontline story about that in a minute here. But I want to just debunk a few myths here about Airbnb, because I get a lot of people, probably one a month anyways, that will call me up or email me saying, oh, and I'm looking to buy a condo in downtown or Kitsilano or Mount Pleasant, and I want to run Airbnb, so I need to have the strata allow Airbnb. Well, the first problem is that the vast majority of stratas do not allow Airbnb. I know probably of about 15 or 20 in the lower Vancouver and surrounding area that allow Airbnb legally. However, after you weed it down from the bad stratas to the few stratas that are actually decent that I'd want to buy a unit in, I can count on one hand right now the number of stratas in downtown or Mount Pleasant or Kits that allow Airbnb that are a decently run strata, something you'd at least want to buy into. The rest, sure, you can run Airbnb, but I wouldn't buy one of these units. You're looking at tens of thousands of dollars in many cases, and levies coming up, old stratas, wood frame falling apart. So sure, any extra income you get off your Airbnb, it's going to go out the back door in the form of levies and repair bills. But the one thing you have to remember, of the few that are legal that are good stratas, you cannot put a rental property on the Airbnb market. The only way you can rent as an Airbnb, if the strata will allow it, is it has to be your principal residence. This has to be your main home. You can only have one principal residence. It has to be designated as your principal residence for tax purposes. And you can only rent it out on Airbnb no more than half the year. You have to live in it full time as your principal residence for a minimum of 6 months out of the year. The next hurdle you have to go over is you have to register it with Strata. Some Stratas do have a cap on the number of short-term rentals. If they do allow Airbnb, they might only allow 20 total. And then you also have to, of course, register it with the city of Vancouver, and you have to get a license and pay an annual licensing fee. So very few stratas even allow Airbnb, even less are good enough to want to buy into that allow Airbnb. And then after that, again, it has to be your principal residence. So you cannot come to me and say, hey, when I want to buy an investment unit, I'm going to put it on as Airbnb. You can't do it. You have to buy it as your principal residence and live in it for 6 months out of the year. And that's the way Airbnb is. So most of the condos that I see on Airbnb are run illegally. And I go back to that story. There's a group of these guys that know the racket. They'll prey on rookie or inexperienced landlords, get in, and then immediately turn it over as an Airbnb. And they know they're going to get caught quick, but they know, hey, I can hold out 4, 5, 6 months before I actually have to get out. Frontline story, I think I've mentioned this in passing before. The reason I'll bring it up now is because I just sold this unit. But 3.5 years ago, I was representing the buyer on a really prime building in downtown here on Hornby Street. It's a boutique building. I know this building really well. I've got probably 5 or 6 clients in there, investors as well as principal residence buyers. Unit came up, good little 1-bed, 1-bath with parking. The seller on it was this bad story who got caught up in an illegal Airbnb. He was from Fraser Valley somewhere, first-time investor, bought the unit, was inexperienced. I guess the realtor, wasn't like me and didn't educate this guy on how to get a tenant, how to screen tenants, run credit checks, all the boxes you want to check off to make sure this tenant is legit. And when you do that, you pretty much eliminate any chance of this ever being sublet as an Airbnb. He obviously rented it without doing his homework on these people. The young lady rented it, said it was going to be her principal residence, of course, where she was going to live in it, and she worked downtown, which was a lie. Immediately, she cloned 3 or 4 fobs and put it on Airbnb and started renting it nightly. It only took the Strata about 4 weeks to figure this out. It was in the summer, people coming and going endlessly. But again, it was a long process. By the time the Strata found out about it, immediately they started fining the owner, because they're going to start fining you $200 a week or $300 a week. The poor owner here then had to hire a lawyer and had to go through the proceedings to get her evicted, which took time. Long story short, he ended up with $2,000 or $3,000 in fines, another couple $1,000s in legal fees before they finally got her out. Left a terrible taste in this guy's mouth, of course. This was his first investment property and decided to sell the home after 6 months. Owned it for 6 months, sold it. I was more than happy to buy it, got it at a good price. I gave him full asking, 2 days on market. He just wanted out. Just now to come full circle, I just sold that property a week ago at a cool $140,000 profit for my buyer. And he didn't have any intention really of buying and flipping this. He put a tenant in and only had one solid tenant, a young professional woman in there for 3.5 years, paying $2,100 a month. She didn't want to leave. We ended up buying her out so we could sell it. We gave her 45 days to sign a mutual agreement to end tenancy and gave her 2 months rent as compensation. Ended up selling it at a very nice profit. My guy is consolidating some units to buy a duplex. That's the reason why I sold it. But those are the kind of stories. I've had 2 of these in the last few years where poor landlord, rookie landlord, rented it to someone who then sublet it out on Airbnb. Just off track here quick. I was walking downtown and I forget what street it was, Davie or Seymour Street. And I saw a sign, they cut keys and it was like a hardware store or something. But anyways, I saw a sign in the window saying condo fobs. Now, be very careful with this, folks. You are not allowed to clone fobs. It will be an illegal fob. And that's what these people that run Airbnb do. They go and clone a bunch of fobs because they need multiple fobs. They need one. They give one to the cleaning crew. The tenants get 2, or the Airbnb guest gets 1 or 2 fobs. Totally illegal. Maybe someone has some more experience on this, but this was a storefront downtown that was advertising condo fobs. If you lose your fob or you need an extra fob, the only place you can get that fob is from the Strata management company. And the reason being is that they track all those fobs. Every fob that is assigned to your unit has a tracking code on it, and for good reason. They want to know who is coming in and out at any time of the day. So if they had a break into the parkade sometime between 3 and 5 a.m., the first thing they'll do is check the computer to see what fobs were used during that time frame. And they can also back it up with the cameras as well. So be careful. You are not allowed to clone fobs. Highly illegal. The only source to getting new fobs is through your property management company. Off topic there. Now, where Airbnb does work and works very well is in a detached home that maybe has a garden suite or a basement suite, or even better, in a laneway home. So I had a home I sold in Renfrew, detached home in Renfrew last year, that the owners lived upstairs. The downstairs had a beautiful garden suite at ground level, walked out to a nice south-facing patio that they were generating $250 to $300 a night on, over $5,000 monthly year-round. They were running it on Airbnb. The unit was beautifully furnished inside, cute as a bug's ear. The unit came with a couple of bicycles, a 20-minute ride into downtown, close to transit. They were doing fantastic. I have a home listed for sale right now. It's on my homepage as I'm doing this video on Ash Street. That it's a two duplexes, 2 half duplexes, a garden suite, and a older laneway house. The laneway house has been being run as an Airbnb. My seller is generating a tremendous amount of income off this, $5,000 to $6,000 a month consistently. It's booked solid in the spring and summer months. He tells me he was booked 15, 18 days even during COVID. And a lot of the guests were staying 6, 7, 8 days. They stay longer. But that is where Airbnb really works well. Of course, you've got to be licensed with the city. You got to get the license renewed every year. The nice thing with this is that the owners live upstairs, or they live in the main house, and the coach house is being rented as an Airbnb. That's where it works the best, I think. But for condos, again, you are very limited by the strata. Most stratas, and pretty much all the good ones except for a handful that I know of, do not allow Airbnb. Maybe if someone wants to send me, if you've got a good strata or know of a good strata, a quality strata that allows Airbnb, I'd like to know, because I'll add it to my list. But a lot of the stratas that allow it, not too interested in buying. There's issues with the strata. I've looked into it. The documents are a mess. But you've got to be licensed. The big hurdle is it has to be your principal residence. So back to is Airbnb having a big effect on the rental market right now? No. Yeah, there's some illegal Airbnbs being run, but back, when it first was introduced 6, 7, 8 years ago when Airbnb came in, yeah, it did have a bit of a jolt there if you go back and watch my blogs. Because many long-term landlords that were renting these units by the year, 1 year lease vacant, decided to experiment with Airbnb. And they did well. But the party didn't last all that long. 2 years, maybe 3 in some of these stratas that took their time. But for right now, most stratas do not allow Airbnb. Most of the ones you see, or a good majority of the ones you see as far as condos go, downtown or kits, Olympic Village, a lot of those are being run illegally. And go back and watch my blogs on screening for tenants. I'll have to do another blog maybe later this spring on what to look out for. Doing your due diligence when you're screening tenants, because I think that is probably the biggest fear right now, is renting a condo to someone who then turns around, sublets it on Airbnb. It's a nightmare. I'm going to do a second part blog here, and I'm going to talk about the current situation with rental rates downtown, because we're seeing a huge spike in rental prices right now, as I predicted a couple of years ago, and I've been predicting all along. COVID now is ended. People are moving back into the city like I said they would. We're not building anything, or very little. Nothing really is coming online here in the next couple of years downtown. Anything that is ultra luxury. Those will not be rentals. And immigration, students are coming back in, contract workers, and this doesn't surprise me. You're seeing now a typical 1-bedroom condo downtown going for around $2,300 a month and up. So stay tuned for a part 2 on that. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.